I love as I get older, is discovering those opportunities where I was wrong, and it's an opportunity that I actually learned something along the way. Those commissions and the processes that were put in place were actually very good. The commissioners went around, and if you weren't there, they put their plans out, they went around, they took public comment from all around the state and did several revisions of the map. There was one commission for the congressional districts and another for the state delegations here that go to Denver. I was really heartened by what I saw there with how the commission listened to the requirements that were put in front of them by the constitutional amendments. So being able to take certain types of information into account, like communities of interest and things like that. And I watched this process and watched how the maps changed over time, certainly around where I live. So I would encourage that other states do that as well. This was something that other states around the country were watching our results because everyone is worried about gerrymandering. Now that said, I think it's important also that everyone considers what we're facing here on the Western Slope. And that's why I want to invite everyone to vote for a candidate who will take the time to come and meet with the people on the Western Slope. Will come and take the time to take questions from people on the Western Slope. Because right now, you're right, that rural voice is being taken for granted. We're seeing so many things that are happening not only in Denver, but in DC as well. So that's where I'll start. I don't think I have any particular policies that I would enact as a legislator, but I think it's a way that we can showcase Colorado and how we did things right here and show that around the country.
All right, thank you. Question number 4 is really kind of a 3-part question, so if I need to repeat, I certainly will. First of all, what is your stance on America's energy policy, and what kind of policies would you honestly support the transition of energy production in communities where the resources currently exist? And do you support rebuilding infrastructure or repurposing infrastructure to produce, transmit, and store energy?
I'll tell you a quick story that many people don't know about me. Part of the reason that I went into engineering was related to my uncle. My uncle worked for Tennessee Valley Authority and was in electric car development, way back before it was cool. So I can remember riding around in him. This was, gosh, it must have been back in the 80s. And hearing about how he was solving problems. And not only that, but his uncle was in the first graduating class at University of Kentucky. So, you can imagine how an aspiring student would go through and walk the halls and see those photographs of my family there. We are facing a transition. I feel like we really need to be careful about this. I know that there are a lot of people that want to be very aggressive, but we have to worry about the unintended consequences too. That aggressiveness can raise energy prices for many people who are suffering and can't really afford to pay that extra. We also have to be cognizant of reliability. Our renewables are not quite reliable yet, and that's why we have fossil fuel backups. So as an engineer, as somebody who loves technology, I like the idea of renewable energy. I want it to work. I want it to be successful. As a policymaker, I will encourage caution. And let's be very deliberate about that. Let's do it in such a way so that we're not causing harm to people who can't afford that extra cost and that degradation of their way of life. I think repurposing sounds like a very good idea. There are things that can be improved, but we shouldn't tear everything down just to rebuild it back newer and better. Again, this is going to be a phased approach. When you're facing any engineering project, it's always kind of a phased approach. You have to decide what it is that you can accomplish now And you have to be able to dream big for the future. And then you can lay that roadmap, lay those plans for how you get to that big dream in the future. Did I get all three?
You did, so thank
Okay.
you. Yes. So question number 5 is a little more open-ended and shorter, but I'll make up for that on 6. What do you see as being the most critical issue facing our country today, and how would you address this issue if elected?
Certainly one of the most critical issues is affecting us right here in Colorado, and that's the fentanyl problem that we have. Now, I'm kind of a purist when it comes to government, right? Do we want politicians and bureaucrats 2,000 miles away micromanaging things for us here in Colorado? Or do we prefer that the federal government give us the tools to solve that here in Colorado? So here's what I would do as a new policymaker in Washington. There's a bill that's currently out there. It's called Stopping Overdoses of Fentanyl Analogs. It'll do a number of things. It'll move drugs and substances that have similarities to fentanyl. It'll move those into Schedule 1 of the drug list. What is that? Schedule 1 are substances that are believed to have really no medical use but are highly addictive. So this will move a number of those there. It'll give additional tools to those of us here in Colorado who are on the front lines, who are the first responders. In addition, we should give the Secretary the option and the ability to move new formulations of those fentanyl analogs, give them the ability to move those onto the Schedule 1 list as well. Finally, we can't solve this problem with such the porous border that we have. And so I would look to increase the capability of our Coast Guard and our Border Patrol and interdict these drugs that are coming in. Because like it or not, fentanyl it's not just a Colorado problem. It's not just that we lost 900 people last year. Only a few weeks ago, there was a package intercepted that was on its way to Copper Mountain. I mean, Copper Mountain, come on. And Steamboat has lost a number of people in the last couple of years. The deaths in Boulder are just even painful to talk about. So that's the number one issue that's facing the nation domestically and here in Colorado.
All right, thank you. All right, question number 6. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the total land area in the United States, categorized as farmland in the 1950s, represented nearly 80% of the total land area in the United States. Today, farmland accounts for only roughly about 40% of the same land, while the population has grown more than 98%. The need for food security is reaching critical points, and agricultural producers must meet the demand of this growing population. If elected, how will you work to support ag producers in Colorado?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The topic of ag is one that is obviously close to my heart, having grown up on a farm. It's a way of life for many of us. It's even kind of surprising that I got away from that, although I still have time, and the farm is still there. This is an interesting topic, right? I like that there are opportunities for building efficiencies into the system. I like that we are able to trade with our neighbors, like Mexico and Canada. But we do need to protect the ag and the ranching that happens here, not just in Colorado, but it's all over the nation. So I would look at this more as, what are we doing to hurt ag right now? There's tremendous amounts of regulation that we can get rid of. There's banking and things like that are adding to the cost of doing business. There are Colorado regulations that are adding to the cost of doing business. As a business owner, right, we kind of take those costs, we put that on our balance sheet, and whatever's left over, that's how much we make. And we often don't pause to really think about what all of that is doing, and do we really need all of those regulations? So that's the approach that I would take in Washington. Let's look at things that are regulated at the federal level that are disincentivizing, de-incentivizing agriculture, and we'll find a way that we can do something that way. I'm not a big fan of throwing money at problems. I'm not a big fan of promising a whole bunch of new bureaucrats. We have plenty of examples where that's not worked in the past. I think it's more important that we start with a conversation about what is causing farmers to sell their land. I mentioned a moment ago the tactic of buy and dry, which is affecting water here. Is it something so simple as that, or is there more to it that we need to really look at?
All right, thank you. And thank you for answering all those questions. So for closing remarks, as a wrap up, we'd love to hear your final thoughts. You have 4 minutes for closing remarks.
Thank you, and thank you again to Club 20 for hosting a wonderful event. Da Vinci said, "The noblest pleasure is in the joy of understanding." And I want to thank everyone that I've met on the Western Slope, the great conversations that I've had, and the opportunity to hear about the things that affect you here. And the opportunity for me to get out of that Front Range bubble and to come to an area that, oh my gosh, it reminds me of why it is that I moved to Colorado to begin with. So I want to thank you all for that, and thank you for this opportunity. The fact that the Club 20 members submitted such great questions really informs as to how important the Western Slope is. I mean, there were questions on debt, on water, on the House, as well as energy, and the critical issue facing us, and farmland and ag. I mean, that really speaks to the voice of the Western Slope and how important this is. I had to repeat, I can't be disappointed enough that my opponent wasn't here and couldn't also talk about some of these things, because I think that would have really been valuable. I feel like my opponent squandered an opportunity. I mean, just like he squandered his seat on the Natural Resources Committee, he overlooked and squandered an opportunity to come and talk to you all tonight. So we're facing a choice this year. Are we going to rely on the District of Columbia and the brainiacs there thinking that they know better, or the resilience of the people on the Western Slope and the can-do attitude that we have in Colorado? Will we allow micromanaging from 2,000 miles away, or will we rely on the people of Colorado to make the decisions and make the choices that affect us here and affect our families here? Are we going to stand up for individual rights, which is the proper role of government to protect those rights, or are we going to allow a government to confer and to rescind rights for political purposes? I think that would have been a great conversation to have. But thank you again. My name is Marshall Dawson. You can check out more at dawsonforcongress.com. And thank you. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you all.